Welcome to this episode of our program, Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate, continuing on with the celebrations of the 6th of October 73 victory, those glorious days in which will always remain as a very defining moment in the history of Egypt, an epic of the history of Egypt and a witness to the military heroism that leading academies in the whole world have been teaching. Battles, victories, sacrifices that followed one another. Perhaps today we are in other battles of combating terrorism, extremism, battles against corruption, drugs, and the process of definitely construction and development. These are our battles of today, especially in Sinai, that ensure us that those glorious October days and victory has motivated everyone to give and to sacrifice and to start developing. Moreover, it became clear that the spirit of October has been a reason for Egypt's son and youth to evoke the glorious past so as to proceed in the battles of the present and the future. Youth represent about 60% of the total population of Egypt, and the state depends on them for modern development plans. Youth empowerment is a word that was likely a dream for Egyptian youth, until President Abdel Fattah AlSissi assumed power in 2014 and put youth and their assuming of office on top of his priorities. And we have been seeing that for 7 years, 7 consecutive years, youth were a priority file. This would be our topic tonight. Youth throughout those decades, what did they achieve up till this minute? This would be our episode tonight with our dear guest, Mr. Mohammed Amer, Coordinator of International Relations and Conferences, member of the Organizing Committee of the World Youth Forum. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Good evening to you, and good evening to all those people who are watching us tonight. I'm so thankful to you for hosting me tonight in the Daily Debate, and one doesn't get the privilege to be here every day in the great Maspiro. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us, and the pleasure is all mine. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a very short break, and we'll come back. Right, welcome back, and should we start or should we take the report? Let me start first. So, starting with our episode tonight, and let me start with the glorious October victory. And that has motivated everyone towards building, towards development. How do you view the reflection of such an epic in the history of Egypt on our youth?
Yes, of course. I'm sure that all of us have watched the speech given by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah AlSissi yesterday. And I think the speech itself reflected the spirit of October's war. It was given on the occasion of the 6th of October's victory. So I think the speech reflected this spirit. Back there was an occasion for crossing the canal, but these days we have another crossing. From the present time to the future, I think we have 2 crossings.
Indeed. But here I have to speak about the first crossing. Yes. And then we move on to our crossing or our...
That's because I'm young. I only witnessed this one.
And that's another question I will ask you about. But before I go there, let me here ask you about the history and how this epic reflects on our youth at that moment. I mean, youth of today. I myself did not witness really the October glorious days itself, but I mean, all those days we've heard about that.
Yes,
We
of
have
course.
been following, and every year we have followed all those films that were made, documentaries, and all the info that we got from there. How did that reflect on our youth?
Yes. Let us first compare between the days of the 6th of October and these days. And I think when I talk about the two crossings, the first crossing, it was driven by young people. It was driven by the army itself, but they were young people.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly like these days.
People.
This is the main comparison between these days. I think in the first crossing, we erased the spirit of defeat. We were defeated 6 years before that. These years, we are erasing the spirit of underdevelopment, under-education, a lot of problems and a lot of issues. I think the spirit of October is being injected into the chests of the Egyptian people, not only on the same day, but every single day, because every single day we have a lot of accomplishments driven by the young people and governed by the government itself. So I think there is no much comparison, but because both crossings were driven by young people.
That crossing, I can recall here one of the Israeli leaders, Prime Minister at that time, Ariel Sharon, when he said that the spirit of youth of the soldiers of Egypt at that time was not that of those of earlier wars.
Yeah, of course.
And that if at any time there will be another war, then people will have to confront the truth of a new kind of soldiers, a new kind of army. This is where I am speaking, or where I'm taking the perspective that war has changed the whole spirit, not only of the army, of our brave armed forces, but of the people, of our youth and their vision towards the future. From your perspective, how that reflected on years or the years that came after that?
Of course. Let me tell you something important. When you are defeated, you are going to correct yourself. You're going to erase all your bad dreams and a lot of failures that you have done in the past. I think when you are young, you're going to achieve a lot of achievements when you are young. But after that, you look at your past and then you think that you are a failure. I think we did the same before the war. We erased the spirit of defeat, and then we were weaponized not only by tanks or weapons. We were weaponed by the spirit of victory, and then we crossed the canal and we are victorious. I think this is happening again right now.
From your point of view, how the spirit of that period really reflected on our youth in order to proceed in battles of today, the present and the future battle. How far does celebrating those days represent a cornerstone in building and boosting the belonging and loyalty of our youth? Because we are aware that we have this very special feelings every time we celebrate the 6th of October.
Let me speak of myself as a teacher this time. I also, every single day, I inject the spirit of victory into the chests of not only young people, but young children in my classes. This is very important. This happened in the past, and this is happening again. I'm doing my, my job to inject this spirit into their chests. I think the President is doing the same with us. So I think all of us need to do this.
Indeed. Raising awareness,
Yes,
raising
of course,
and boosting
of
the
course.
morals of our youth is definitely a job that
Yes.
has to be done. Before we move on with our discussion, let's have this first report. And President AlSissi pays tribute to Egyptian youth on World Youth Day. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah AlSissi offered a special tribute to young Egyptians on Thursday on the occasion of World Youth Day, which falls on August 12. AlSissi posted on his Facebook account on World Youth Day, "I would like to present an esteemed and prideful greeting to Egypt's mighty youth. They are half of the present and all of the future, and with their hands our precious homeland writes an exceptional history of work, construction and advancement." He added that he has absolute confidence in Egypt's youth along with their enthusiasm and determination to realize our genuine dream of building a homeland of honor, pride and dignity. August 12th has been designated the International Youth Day by the United Nations since 2000. Since President AlSissi took office in 2014, the government has held almost a dozen of the national youth conferences. Each was held in a different governorate to ensure the engagement of youth across the country. The president also launched in 2017 the World Youth Forum, of which 3 editions took place. The forums consisted of around 9 parallel sessions and workshops daily for almost a week, offering a platform for youth from around the globe to share their success stories, experience and research projects, and to hold dialogue with panelists who are experts in various fields and international officials. Youth with remarkable achievements received awards in the closing ceremony.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, Mr. Mohammed. And we were speaking about this epic, this in the history of Egypt, and those very precious moments. Moving on to this, to present, to preparing for future,
Yes.
because of course this would be the remembrance, but also a lesson for the future to come. So let me here evaluate the status of youth throughout that time and the difference between the spirit of youth at that time and the spirit
Yes.
of youth, particularly during the past, let me say, 7, 8 years.
Yes, yes, of course.
Definitely. Please tell me how we can compare between those two periods and the spirit in both periods.
Okay, I do believe that President Abdel Fattah AlSissi is the biggest and the best supporter of young people. 2 years after he assumed the chair in Egypt, he called the year 2016 the year of young people, the year of youth. And then in the same year, he initiated the Presidential Leadership Program, which is a hub and a platform for developing the administrative capabilities of young people in order to inject them
The PLP?
into, yes, the PLP. I got the honor to be one of them.
Presidential Leadership
Yes, of course.
Program, yes.
The Presidential Leadership Program to inject them into the administrative system of the country. He learned the lesson from the crossing out there. The crossing was done by young people, and then young people are being supported. We are being supported and listened to these days. So I think he's the biggest supporter.
So this, the victory was made
Yes.
by great people,
Yes,
and those who put all the plans
yes,
and the executive part of the issue, and then implemented by
Yes.
our great and brave soldiers,
yes,
officers at that time. If we speak here about youth empowerment,
yes.
and that's the difference. I mean, the spirit
The spirit
of
victory.
youth at
Yes.
that time was this this very patriotic feeling, this feeling of belonging, of loyalty, and of outrage because of their defeat, and
Yes.
they wanted so much to return their dignity and their pride, and all these were all together that made the spirit.
This was the drive out there.
Indeed. the spirit of youth then. Now we're speaking about another spirit, the spirit of development.
Yes.
And let me say here that the word youth empowerment was a dream.
Yes.
Until President Sisi really assumed
Until he
office.
assumed, yes.
So tell me from this perspective, what does this mean?
Okay, I want you to look at every single cabinet reshufflement. You can see young people faces. We have, how many ministers do we have? Like 26 ministers. You can see a lot of young people, especially His Excellency Prime Minister Mohammed, he's young. So you can see young people are being empowered and injected into the administrative system, such as they are ministers, they are vice ministers, they are governors, they are deputy governors. I think they are injected into the administrative system.
Parliamentarians?
Yes.
With their two chambers?
They are members of parliament for the first time in decades. We have these young and fresh faces in our system. So I think this is the time of empowering young people.
But empowering that, of what you're speaking about, is empowering them in terms of political empowerment.
Not only politically.
And putting them on calibers,
yes.
or in cadres, preparing them for to be heads and to be leaders of the future. But empowerment in reality really meant a lot. And I mean here, the word empowerment was on all levels.
Yes, of course.
So please let me know of how youth were empowered, not just on the political side, but also on the social and economic fronts.
Yes, every single young man is being empowered in his own place. For example, in terms of health, the head of the comprehensive insurance, health insurance, is a young man. So he is injecting his own young and fresh ideas into the system. In terms of education, Minister Dr. Tariq Shawqi is injecting young people into the system of the education, which is being developed for the first time in decades. So I think this is going to be, the dream is being achieved these days. So this is kind of empowerment that we are looking for in every single area.
How about empowering them economically?
Economically.
And socially, definitely.
Yes, and socially, this leads to this. The state is providing facilitated bank loans, facilitated fundings, entrepreneurship opportunities. A lot of job opportunities are being provided by the mega projects. The mega projects like the new cities, the new plants. A lot of young people are working there. So I think the rates of unemployment is being decreased through these
Here you
projects.
pinpointed your finger on a very important issue, which is encouraging the entrepreneurships and the startups.
Yes.
So tell me more about measures that were taken in that.
The central bank itself has bought measures in order to give facilitated bank loans, long-term bank loans, to be given to young people in order to open their own projects and startups. So I found myself one of those, so I went there to get a loan and I got it. It was very easy and I opened my own project and it achieved success after that. A lot of my friends did the same. On the scale of mega projects give a lot of opportunities to young people to work there in order to develop their own social life. So economics leads to social development.
How does this reflect on youth? How do they perceive those measures that were taken for their own benefit, and how do they work together with those efforts?
All these projects are being driven by young people and are being given to young people. For example, the new administrative capital is being built by young people. All the workers there are young people who are going to live there, also young people, because the children of these days, when they get older, they are going to live there. So I think young people are going to benefit a lot from these projects, economically, socially.
But how do they reflect, or how do they kind of work on that, or how do they perceive that?
Yes. As I told you, they are the main driver of this development. They are being empowered. They are being injected into the system itself. A lot of fresher ideas are being executed on the ground by young people. So the owner of the idea is a young man. The executor himself is a young man. So I think we are the biggest beneficiaries of these developments. We are the drivers and we are the beneficiaries.
The issue of boosting youth and empowering them really had lots and lots of efforts. How or what were the measures that were taken in order to encourage our youth to contribute to developing their own country and to be part and parcel of the developmental process?
One of the main programs and initiatives to develop young people mentally, socially, economically, politically was the Presidential Leadership Program and also the NTA, the National Training Academy. This academy is a platform for developing the mindsets of young people in Egypt. So I think this was the biggest initiative given by the government in order to develop and empower young people. I think this was the first step. After that, we had the WIF, the World Youth Forum. This was a platform and a hub, another hub, but internationally, it's an international scale in order to share ideas and knowledge of young people. A lot of ideas are being shared in that hub, are being executed and implemented after that. So I think a lot of measures are being executed on the ground. But it's very important to recognize that the main head of the idea is a young man, the executor or the implementer is a young man, and the beneficiary is a young man. This is very important for the future because I think future young men are drivers of the future itself.
Actually, they are the future itself.
Of course, yeah, we can do that.
I guess before we move on with our discussion, let's have this other report. And Egypt advances 13 places in Commonwealth Youth Development Index, according to the Minister of Sports. Let's watch.
Minister of Youth and Sports Ashraf Subhi has announced that Egypt advanced 13 places in the Youth Development Index developed by the Commonwealth Secretariat in 2020. He said during the past 7 years, the Egyptian state has sought to achieve comprehensive development in all fields and has already accomplished a lot, including developing and building the capacity of youth. The YDI measures the status of young people in 183 countries around the world. The index is a comprehensive measure across 5 domains that are critical to youth development, education, health, employment, civic participation, and political participation. Subhi continued the political leadership was interested in the field of youth empowerment. Investing in the individual was one of the most important priorities for President Abdel Fattah AlSissi, which was clearly demonstrated in the strategy for building the Egyptian person, in addition to the programs and activities presented by the Ministry of Youth and Sports. He added, "We seek to advance Egypt to higher ranks in the YDI, in light of preparing to launch the Egyptian National Strategy for Youth, which is a roadmap for the next 5 years. Egypt ranked 123rd with a rating of 0.624 in 2020, compared to the 138th place with a 0.53 rating in 2016. Singapore ranked first for the first time, followed by Slovenia, Norway, Malta, and Denmark. Meanwhile, Chad, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Afghanistan, and Niger occupied the last ranks, respectively. On the other hand, Syria, Ukraine, Libya, Jordan, and Lebanon declined the most in terms of youth development.
I'd like to welcome back to you, Mr. Mohammed, and we were speaking about generations. Existing generations are the future to come. And throughout the past years, the President was very keen on opening channels with youth. You've spoken about the youth forums or conferences that were held. There have been many of them.
Yes.
And we started with our youth, and then
it goes internationally. Yes.
And then to African, and then to the whole world.
Yes,
Tell me about those channels, and tell me how our youth really benefited from such direct channels with the leadership.
The idea itself of the World Youth Forum, the WIF, was invented in one.
Now, before the
national,
WF or the World Youth Forum, let me take it from the very beginning.
Yes.
Let me take it from the youth conferences that
The
started
national
the
ones.
idea and those direct channels, and asking the president, for God's sake, for the very first time, youth are able to ask their leadership of any kind of question they want.
Yes.
Please.
Nationally speaking, a lot of these conferences are being held and organized by young people in order to share the knowledge and ideas and requests of young people to the president. So he is the first president to open a channel directly between himself and young people. In a lot of these conferences, there was a special event inside the national conference itself in order to give the opportunity to the president to answer the questions of young people about the future. After that, the idea of the WIF was given to the president, and he said yes to it. And the main idea of listening to young people, it went internationally. We organized the WIF in Sharm el-Sheikh in order to answer the ideas, to listen to ideas of young people from all over the world. We first started with the African young people. We listened to their ideas and dreams, and then we went internationally after that.
Speaking about this African one, because that was very much important, as it was the first gathering that gathered together youth from Egypt and with their African peers.
Yes.
And it was an excellent chance in order to exchange their views, their history, their culture.
Yes.
We are African, our grassroots are African, and it was a very nice chance that our young people were able to get in contact with African ones.
African young people, yes.
Tell me about this experience, and tell me how our youth got along with the African ones.
We are so proud of our African roots, and the president himself knows that, so he initiated the program. So I told you before that we have PLP, so we had now a PLP, which is African Presidential Leadership Program, which is mainly directed into the African young people. So a lot of African young people went to Egypt to study the program. It's the same program that we studied, but on the African scale. We met a lot of African young people. We shared knowledge together. We shared ideas. We held conferences together. We held a lot of meetings and webinars together in order to share our ideas and see how can we develop the African continent for a better future. The president initiated that program, and I thank him so much for this, because we didn't know a lot of our roots in Africa. Now we have this opportunity.
Indeed, indeed. Different cultures and different...
Of course. And this is our root.
Yes.
We need to be
and
proud.
they need to know more about us, and they need to understand how we care for them and how they are a real priority and get along. Right. Another experience was the World Youth Forum, and that was another experience where we got in contact with youth from the whole world.
Yes, international.
How did that experience reflect on our youth, and why was it beneficial for them to exchange views, to exchange visions, to see different cultures, to have a kind of cross-culture meetings?
In the national conferences, you have national and local ideas. We have Egyptian ideas, but international scale is very important because we are part of that world. We are the hub of the world itself, so we call ourselves, we are the mother of the world. So when we dealt with young people from different countries, we had a lot and millions of new ideas, fresher ideas that we didn't have them before. So we befriended with them, we held conferences with them, and we had a lot of ideas and fresher ideas. We made a lot of projects and talks with them. We enlarged our memory with these people. So I think we are the beneficiaries of the World Youth Forum, not only Egypt, but the whole world itself.
Why getting in contact with the world youth and the African youth and youth from the whole world?
Yes.
Also, it is important to preserve and protect our entity.
Yes.
And when I'm speaking here, because definitely we are welcoming and we are opening our hands and hearts to the whole world at large. But at the same time, it is very important to also preserve and protect this Egyptian entity that is inside our hearts.
Yes.
How can we make this balance, and how we can do that with our youngsters in terms of, we are aware that our youngsters, they hear the international music and the Western culture, and sometimes they get attracted to traditions that are not really ours, and so raising awareness to the difference between grasping other cultures as for knowing and for understanding, tolerate the differences in cultures, but at the same time maintain our own culture, our own traditions, and our own entity. How far is this important, and what is done in order to do that?
Actually, it's very important, and I want you to look at the mottos and the photos and the slogans of our conferences. For example, WIF, the main motto is the 7 pillars of the Egyptian character. So we have 7 civilizations: Pharaonic, Arab, Islamic, Coptic, Mediterranean.
Actually, Coptic and then Islamic.
Yes. Yeah, of course, it's not that order. Yeah, I'm not talking in the order. But you can see that. So it's an international conference, but driven by an Egyptian spirit. Look at the buildings in the new administrative capital. It's all Egyptian spirit. You can see the pharaonic buildings. You can see the palaces, the bridges. The new buildings are being built in an Egyptian style.
But what I mean here is how to attract our youth. And why am I speaking about attracting our youth to our entity, or to like our entity? Because that will create a kind of a return to loyalty.
Loyalty, yes, of course.
To and our homeland.
And belonging, of course.
And belonging to this nation, to this great nation. So this is how, or from this perspective, I'm taking the conversation, is how to do that with our youngsters who are sometimes very much attracted to every weird, or not weird, but different culture and all the attractions that they find.
We talked about this in the break, me and you. We can start with the young children, the primary phase. You can inject a spirit of loyalty and belonging in these children through their subject that they are going to study. Nowadays, you can learn subjects like values, belonging, Egyptology. Of course, I suggest that you can study Egyptology in order to know your own past and to be proud of it. So we can start with the educational system. So we can inject this into education, and you're going to have a loyal generation in the future. So, but start with education. This is very important.
Imagine creating youth who have the spirit of the 6th of October war.
Yes.
And the enthusiasm and empowerment of those days. Imagine what youth can do.
It's very important. And I remember 2 days before that, I was in a car, and a little child, it was like 7 to 8 years old, and he was singing October Wars. It was very amazing moment to listen a little child singing that song. So I asked his father and mother, how's that happening? So they told me that they are singing the same songs in the house, in their home. So I think parents are very responsible for this. I think that the newer generations are going to be loyal if only their parents are responsible enough for injecting that spirit inside them.
injecting that
Yes,
spirit.
yes, of course.
Because injecting
I'm
that
talking
spirit,
about injecting, not forcing, injecting.
right.
Yes, it's very important.
It's not the kind of injection which,
Yeah,
but
it's not forcing.
but it's
talking about Egypt, talking about.
it's filling their
Yes.
spirit with this kind
Yes.
of love and love and pride and proudness
And
of their own
you can listen to
country.
your own foreign songs. You can listen to, you can watch a lot of foreign TV series and movies. But first, you need to know that you have Egyptian and wonderful Egyptian films. You need to watch them. Yes,
Indeed.
of course, and you're going to enjoy a lot.
If I may end that episode, I would ask you, what are the dreams of today's youth? What do they want?
They want, first of all, they want decent life. This is very important. And I think this is going to be a long journey, but decent life is the first request. Then, good educational system, job opportunities. The three pillars of every single good life. Decent life, job opportunities, and education. So
Actually, this is life.
this is life, of course. If you don't have these, you don't have life. So,
These are the pillars for life.
of course. But
Unfortunately, my time is out here, Mr. Mohammed Amer. I
thank you
have
so
to
much.
end
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. The pleasure is all ours. Mr. Mohammed Amer, coordinator of the International Relations and Conferences, member of the organizing committee of the World Youth Forum. We thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
being
so
with
much.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Next episode will be on Sunday with another colleague and another important debate. Until then, good night.